Hello, everyone. I am your host, Reagan L. Jackson, and I want to thank each listener for joining our third episode of Sitting Pretty, Video Turns 90 podcast, a walk down memory lane from 1944 to 1953, a podcast dedicated to the celebration of the Beta Delta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated's 90th Charter Day celebration. Today, I am joined by Mrs. A. Carolyn Hackett, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Beta Delta Omega chapter. Mrs. A. Carolyn Hackett, a 1966 initiate of the Gamma Omicron chapter at Tougaloo College. Mrs. Hackett holds the Bachelor of Science in Economics from Tougaloo College and a Master's in Reading from the University of Southern Mississippi. She is a life member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, celebrating 57 years of active membership. She has served as a president of the Beta Delta Omega chapter. But before we begin, let me introduce myself. I began my AKA membership in 2016 as an undergraduate in the Gamma Rho chapter located at Jackson State University, a proud legacy following my mother's footsteps, Dr. Lorraine Hudson Jackson. After graduating in spring of 2018, I transferred into the Beta Delta Omega chapter, working hard as a chair and co-chair of several committees. I am currently employed as a music educator of 6 years with the Jackson Public School District and serve as the after-school coordinator. I am a doctoral candidate in educational leadership with the Cohort 13 at Belhaven University. Good afternoon, Mrs. Hackett, and welcome to our podcast. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you to discuss Beta Delta Omega as both a member and history maker yourself.
Hello, Reagan. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak to your listeners today.
I know we're talking about the history of BDO from 1944 to 1953, but I'd like to start with a bit about your personal history with the sorority. When did you join Beta Delta Omega, and what are your fondest memories of that time?
Reagan, I joined Beta Delta Omega in the early 70s during the administration of President Esther Martin Rigsby. Our chapter member, Ernestine Holloway, was the reigning Southeastern Regional Director at that time, and that in itself gave the chapter added visibility and recognition. As a young member, it allowed me the opportunity to become involved in service projects, to get to know the Jackson area, to develop lifelong friends, to participate in conferences at all levels, and to develop my leadership skills. It was a wonderful time to be in Beta Delta Omega.
Wonderful. Well, today's podcast focuses on a time well before your time. But I know as a former chapter president, you are well versed in the history and the accomplishments of that period.
Yes. Starting in 1944, Belma Hamilton served as president, having been elected in 1942 and literally serving against a backdrop of World War II. Her leadership was unique in that respect because the needs of the community, of the nation, really skyrocketed at that time. As you can imagine, service projects focused a great deal on healthcare.
Indeed. Healthcare seems a constant in our programs, no matter the leadership.
For good reason. Under Velma Hamilton's administration, the chapter purchased an incubator for the Jackson Hospital to ensure that Black infants received proper care. Of course, during that time, due to segregation, Black and white infants could not use the same incubators. We were fighting against racism and oppression at home and abroad, but with different motives.
Yes, and we are still fighting for women's health care and child care.
Unfortunately, Reagan, we are. Alpha Kappa Alpha has always been engaged in healthcare initiatives because we understand that our physical health is the foundation for a strong community. But the Hamilton administration also supported the Mobile Book Project in the Mississippi Delta, which fostered literacy in the Black community during a time of segregated schools. All schools for Black children were underfunded and not given adequate books, if any, so this program assistance was vital.
And you are a reading specialist, correct? So this must mean a lot to you to know that the sorority cared about this issue as well.
Well, not a reading specialist, but I do have a degree in reading. Yes, literacy in all its forms is so important to be successful, however you define success. But I must admit, it did and continues to make me proud to know that my sorority's values have always been in alignment with mine.
Well said, and I totally agree with you. Let's switch gears a bit. Dorothy Moman became president in 1947.
Yes, Dorothy Moman became president, and under her administration, this was truly a pivotal moment in Beta Delta Omega history. She led the chapter and the Jackson area back to our undergraduate beginning.
How so?
Dorothy Moman served from 1947 to 1949, and what happened in 1949 changed everything for Black college-educated women in Jackson. At the 1949 Regional Conference in New Orleans, and with successful petitions by Dorothy Gordon Gray and Melita Woodard, both BDO members, Alpha Kappa Alpha granted undergraduate charters for Gamma Omicron at Tougaloo College and Gamma Rho at Jackson State College, now Jackson State University.
Both of those chapters are celebrating their 75th anniversaries in 2024. I'm sure both chapters are planning something grand to commemorate the grand occasion.
Yes, it's an amazing milestone, and even better to celebrate our collective impact in the Jackson area. The fact that we have maintained the supervising graduate chapter for both chapters for 75 years is even more outstanding.
A special shout out to all graduate advisors out there. President Moman attended Tougaloo College, right?
Yes, she did. She taught at the Daniel Hand Prep School on the campus. Being on a college campus while teaching high school also provided the impetus to increase our scholarship giving. Previously, the chapter provided scholarships to high school students. We realized at that time that we needed to assist those aspiring to college and those who were already there.
To be able to do all of this so long ago and with little resources is absolutely amazing.
You're right. They didn't have a lot financially, but they shared what they had and shared it with a good heart.
We can learn a great deal from our four sisters. After all, I've heard about these early presidents and the history of Beta Delta Omega. What else could be next?
Well, Beta Delta Omega definitely gets bigger and better. In 1950, our next president, Odessa Howard Waters, committed our chapter to regional and national participation.
We definitely attend regional and national conferences, so we have Mrs. Water to thank for that.
Yes, Beta Delta hosted the 1950 regional conference here in Jackson. Despite racial segregation keeping Blacks out of the city's hotels and restaurants, President Waters turned to Jacob L. Reddix, then president of Jackson College, to have it on the campus. Delegates from Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee lived in the residence halls, and Beta Delta Omega was commended for its planning efforts.
Even in the midst of racism and segregation, Beta Delta Omega found a way to make things work and still serve.
Yes, and I'm very proud of this era in our history. It's also when we were able to resume our signature fundraising project, Fashionetta, as well as our annual Founders Day observance.
That is truly remarkable.
And all of this took place before President Walters was able to complete her full administration.
Really? Why?
Odessa Waters and her family relocated during her term, and Zalima Price became president of the chapter in 1950. She served as a vice president under Waters, so it was a very smooth transition.
What can you tell us about her leadership of the chapter and service during her administration?
Zalima Price has an interesting educational background. She holds bachelor's degrees from both Alcorn and Hampton and a master's degree from Iowa State University. I don't think we knew exactly what her degrees were in, but I can tell you that she was all about business.
Aren't we all? Tell us more.
Well, one of her first accomplishments was to review the chapter's bylaws to broaden the membership radius to grow the chapter. And most importantly, she ushered in a financial assessment to fund the program budget.
So we have her to thank for that.
Yes, bittersweet, I know, but it stabilizes the budget and really gives us a good picture of what we can and can't do financially. It takes the guesswork out of budgeting.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And we certainly do too much to guess.
Yes, and during this time, we continue to support healthcare initiatives with the March of Dimes, the American Red Cross, and the Veterans Hospital. Even though World War II was over, veterans and their families needed support. The chapter always tried to meet the needs of the community wherever it could.
I am simply amazed at the commitment at such a high level before advanced technology. To think that they were literally accomplishing this by telephone and writing letters. Imagine what they would have accomplished with what we have now.
Reagan, not so fast. We didn't really have access to telephones at that time readily either. I think not having today's technology brought them closer. They spent a great deal of time together making all this work and with much fewer members than we have today.
Thank you for setting the record straight. We should be proud and take note. So the last president of this period is Beverly Robertson. What can you tell us about her leadership and the chapter's activities?
Beverly Robinson was the 10th president of the chapter.
Another milestone presidency.
Yes, and she did not disappoint. Mrs. Robinson truly believed in service and retired as a field director of the Mississippi Girl Scout Council.
Now that's commitment personified.
Indeed, one of her claims to historical fame was that she implemented another signature project, financial project, in addition to our fashionetta, and we called it the Pink and Green Birthday Calendar. This calendar was the brainchild of Daisy Reddix. It was very profitable for many, many years. You may not know or you may not follow boxing, but Sugar Ray Robinson was a prize fighter at that time, and his sister, Evelyn Robinson, was a guest model in Fashionetta that year. Now, just having a relative and a sister, no less, of such a famous athlete was a big deal then.
I'm sure it was, because we love a good celebrity sighting.
Yes, we do. But I tell you, Beta Delta Omega has so many stars in her own right, and our stars have always made the chapter shine brightly in our community and for our community.
Absolutely. Well, Mrs. Hackett, I thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge with me and our listeners today.
You're so very welcome, Reagan.
This concludes episode 3 with Mrs. Carolyn Hackett. We invite you to continue to listen as we celebrate 90 years of Beta Delta Omega. Please subscribe and tune into our next episode.